Is that really what you're wearing?" Richard's voice wasn't just a question, it was a judgment, sharp and cold as the December ice forming on their penthouse windows. He didn't look at his wife, Amelia, but at her reflection in the full-length mirror, his lip curled in disdain. The dress was simple, a deep navy silk that fell to the floor without adornment. It was elegant, timeless, and, in his eyes, a complete embarrassment. "We are attending the Metropolitan Gala, Amelia, not a PTA meeting. You look insignificant." "You will embarrass me." He turned away, missing the flicker of steel in his wife's quiet eyes. He had no idea that the insignificant woman he just mocked was the only reason he was even invited. The penthouse on Fifth Avenue was a monument to modern wealth, a stark landscape of white marble, glass, and polished steel. It overlooked Central Park, but the view was less a window and more a high-definition screensaver. Beautiful, distant, and cold. This was Richard's world. Amelia just lived in it. Their marriage, now entering its 5th year, had begun with a whirlwind romance. Richard, a rising star at Morgan Stanley, a man whose ambition was as sharp and tailored as his bespoke suits, had been charmed by Amelia's quiet grace. She was good stock, he'd told his colleagues, an old, understated family, though seemingly without the accompanying fortune. She was the perfect wife, placid, intelligent, and utterly undemanding. She provided a serene backdrop to his high-stress, high-stakes life. Lately, however, her serenity had begun to grate on him. His career had stalled. He was a managing director, but the partnership circle, the real power, remained just out of reach. He was 42, and men younger than him were leaping ahead. He felt the constant, gnawing pressure to perform. Not just in the boardroom, but in the ballroom. His life was a performance, and his wife, he felt, was forgetting her lines. "The Metropolitan Children's Hospital Gala is not just a party, Amelia," he'd said over breakfast, not lifting his eyes from the Wall Street Journal. "It's the event of the season. Charles Harrison will be there." Charles Harrison was the chairman of the hospital board, and, more importantly, the gatekeeper to a massive corporate account Richard was desperate to land. Landing the Harrison account wouldn't just secure his bonus, it would guarantee his promotion to partner. "I'm aware, Richard. I sent in our RSVP 2 weeks ago," Amelia replied, sipping her tea. "That's not what I mean." He finally lowered the paper, his blue eyes intense. "I mean appearance. This isn't one of your quiet charity lunches. I need you to... Try. Sophia is handling my table arrangement. She understands the stakes." Ah, Sophia. Her name hung in the air between them, sharp and metallic. Sophia was Richard's protégée at the bank, a woman 10 years younger than Amelia, with a ravenous ambition that matched Richard's own. She was all sharp angles, loud labels, and a laugh that seemed to echo with networking opportunities. Richard insisted their relationship was purely professional, but Amelia wasn't naive. She saw the late-night texts, the shared jokes, the way his eyes followed Sophia at company events. "I'm sure she does," Amelia said, her voice perfectly even. "I'll find something appropriate." "Appropriate isn't good enough. You need to look spectacular," he snapped, folding his paper. "I can't have my wife looking like a suburban mother while I'm trying to close the biggest deal of my career. Ask Sophia for help. She's wearing Balenciaga. She knows people." The implication was clear. You don't. Amelia said nothing. She simply watched as he adjusted his Patek Philippe watch, grabbed his briefcase, and left the marble foyer without a backward glance. For a long time, Amelia sat alone in the sterile silence of the $30 million penthouse she had paid for. Richard believed her family money was a small, dwindling trust fund, just enough to keep her comfortable. He had no idea of the reality. He had never bothered to ask. He saw her quiet life, her volunteer work at a downtown soup kitchen, her hours spent reading in the library, her simple, logo-free clothing as proof of her lack of drive. He mistook her silence for simplicity, her kindness for weakness. It had been a deliberate choice. When she first met Richard, Amelia, or rather, Amelia Westwood, was exhausted. She was the sole inheritor of the Westwood industrial fortune, a staggering 9-figure empire built by her reclusive father. For years, she had run the family's philanthropic arm, the Westwood Foundation, entirely from the shadows. She had moved to New York seeking anonymity, a chance to be just Amelia. She wanted, desperately, to be loved by someone who didn't know she could buy the building they were standing in. Richard had seemed like that person, but over the years, she realized he hadn't fallen in love with her. He'd fallen in love with the idea of her, a blank canvas on which to project his ideal image of a supportive, background wife. Now the Metropolitan Children's Hospital Gala was upon them. It was, as Richard had correctly stated, the event of the season. He was desperate to impress its chairman. What he didn't know, and what he had never, in 5 years, thought to ask, was what her connection to the hospital was. For the past 3 years, the Westwood Foundation had been the hospital's largest and only anonymous donor. She had personally overseen the funding and construction of their new $200 million pediatric oncology wing, and tonight, for the first time, the Foundation's mysterious benefactor was scheduled to appear in public to accept the hospital's gratitude. Amelia stood and walked to her closet, a room the size of a small apartment. She pushed past the rows of designer clothes Richard had bought for her, gaudy, flashy pieces that she never wore. In the back, she found what she was looking for. It was a dress by a small, independent London artisan. It was simple, elegant, and had cost more than Richard's car. It was perfect. The night of the gala arrived. The penthouse was filled with a frantic, crackling energy, all of it radiating from Richard. He had been in his dressing room for 2 hours, emerging in a perfectly tailored Tom Ford tuxedo. He looked like a movie star, and he knew it. He poured himself a glass of scotch, the amber liquid catching the light of the skyline. "The car will be here in 20 minutes, he called out. "Amelia, are you ready? We cannot be late." Amelia emerged from her own dressing room. The navy silk dress settled around her like water. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, elegant chignon. Her only jewelry was a pair of sapphire earrings that had belonged to her mother. She wore no necklace, letting the clean lines of the dress speak for themselves. She looked poised, serene, and, to Richard, infuriatingly plain. He stopped, his glass halfway to his lips. His face tightened. This was the moment the hook was built on. "Is that really what you're wearing?" The disdain in his voice was a physical blow. "I told you, Richard, I found something." "Found something?" "Found something in a thrift store." "Amelia, this is a joke." He walked over to her, circling her as if inspecting livestock. "There's no anything. No flair, no design. It's navy. You look like you're attending a funeral." My God, Sophia sent me a picture of her dress. It's a custom Versace, red, beaded. She looks like a star. That is what power looks like. "I am not Sophia, Richard," Amelia said, her voice dangerously quiet. "That is painfully obvious," he snapped. "Do you understand what is happening tonight? I am networking for our future. I need to walk in that room with a woman on my arm who commands respect, not pity. You look like your little trust fund finally ran out. You look cheap. Cheap." The word struck her. She thought of the checks she signed every month, the check that paid for the very scotch in his hand, the check that funded the hospital wing he was so desperate to be associated with. "I like the dress," she said, a thread of iron entering her tone. "You like it? Who cares what you like? It's not about you. It's about us. It's about the image we project." He ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. He walked to his dresser and picked up a black velvet box. He threw it onto the bed. "Here, I bought you this last week. Put it on. At least it might distract from, well, the rest of it." Amelia opened the box. Inside was a garish diamond necklace, all large stones and no subtlety. It was a classic new money piece, designed to shout its price tag from across the room. It was something Sophia would have loved. "It's not my style, Richard." "I don't care. Put it on. Or better yet, go change. Wear that gold thing I bought you for the awards dinner. The one you said was too much." "No," Amelia said. It was a simple word, but it landed with the force of a gavel. Richard stared at her, genuinely shocked. She never said no. "What did you say?" "I said no. I am wearing this dress, and I am not wearing that necklace." Richard's face flushed a deep, angry red. He stepped close to her, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You will do what I say, Amelia. You are my wife, and you will not embarrass me tonight. You are a liability. You're a quiet, boring woman with no ambition and no style. And frankly, I am sick of having to apologize for you. You're dragging me down." He grabbed her arm. "You will go and change, or I will go without you." Amelia looked at his hand on her arm. She didn't flinch. She simply met his gaze. "Then you should go without me, Richard, because I am not changing." He was stunned into silence by her defiance. He had pushed her, certain she would fold as she always did. But this was different. He saw something in her eyes he didn't recognize, not anger, but a profound, chilling indifference. "Fine," he spat, releasing her arm. "Fine. Come as you are. Come as the mousy little bore you are. But when Charles Harrison and his wife look at you like you're the help, don't come crying to me. I'll be at the bar, trying to salvage my reputation." He grabbed his coat. "I'll take the Mercedes. You can take an Uber. I don't want to be seen arriving with you." He slammed the door to the penthouse, leaving Amelia alone in the vast, silent room. She stood for a moment, the echo of the slam fading. The cruelty of his words, a liability, boring, embarrass me, should have shattered her. Instead, they felt like the final click of a lock falling into place. She picked up her phone, not to call an Uber, but to send a single text to a number saved as Mr. Clark. "I'm on my way. Please use the private entrance on 81st. I'll be arriving separately." The reply was instantaneous. "Of course, Miss Westwood. The chairman is eagerly awaiting your arrival." Amelia put on her coat, a simple cashmere wrap, just as understated as her dress, and walked out of the apartment she would never again call home. The facade of the Metropolitan Museum of Art was awash in blue and gold light for the gala. A long black carpet, not red, stretched from the curb, past a gauntlet of photographers from Vogue, Tatler, and the New York Times. The air was electric with the arrival of the city's elite. Richard's Mercedes S-Class pulled up precisely at 8. He stepped out, adjusting his cufflinks, a practiced, charming smile already fixed on his face. He posed for a moment, soaking in the flashbulbs. As he walked the carpet, he heard the photographers calling his name. "Richard, Richard Vaughan, this way." He was, at least in this world, a known quantity. "Where's your lovely wife, Richard?" called a reporter from the post. Richard's smile tightened slightly. Amelia wasn't feeling her best. "She may join later, but she insisted I come and support this wonderful cause." A perfect, sympathetic lie. He entered the great hall, which had been transformed into a glittering forest of white orchids and crystal. Waiters drifted by with trays of champagne. Richard took one, his eyes scanning the room, hunting for his target. He found him almost immediately. Charles Harrison, a man in his late 60s with a mane of white hair and an air of old-world authority, was standing near the grand staircase, looking anxiously at his watch. Before Richard could make his move, a sinuous arm linked with his. "Richard, darling, you made it." Sophia. She was a vision in the Versace he had coveted. The red dress was plastered to her body, a beacon of ambition. "You look incredible," he murmured, kissing her cheek. "You don't look so bad yourself," she purred. "Where's the lovely Amelia? Did she decide to wear her gardening clothes?" Richard let out a short, harsh laugh. "You're not far off. She's indisposed. It's for the best. Tonight is too important." "Absolutely," Sophia agreed, her eyes already casing the room. "There's Harrison. He looks nervous. I hear the big anonymous donor is showing up tonight, the one who built the new wing. They say it's some reclusive tech billionaire. Whoever it is, that's the person we need to meet." "Leave it to me," Richard said, squaring his shoulders. He and Sophia began their calculated drift toward the chairman. 10 minutes after Richard's flashy arrival, a discreet black Bentley Flying Spur, a car that cost 3 times as much as Richard's Mercedes but was designed to be invisible, pulled up to a private side entrance on 81st Street, far from the press. A man in a tuxedo, Mr. Clark, the hospital's head of development, was waiting. He opened the door before the driver could. "Ms. Westwood," he said, his voice hushed with reverence. "Welcome. We are so honored to have you here tonight." "Thank you, David," Amelia said, stepping out. "It's a beautiful evening. The chairman is just inside. He's been incredibly anxious to meet you in person, as has our entire board. I hope I haven't caused too much trouble with my anonymity," Amelia said with a small smile. "Not at all. You've saved this hospital. The trouble has been a pleasure." He escorted her through a private corridor, bypassing the check-in, the press, and the grand entrance. They emerged onto a private balcony overlooking the great hall. From here, Amelia could see the entire party. She saw the sea of designer gowns, the flashing of diamonds, the calculated smiles, and she saw Richard. He was standing with Sophia, who was laughing, her head tossed back, her hand resting possessively on Richard's forearm. They were looking at Charles Harrison, clearly waiting for a chance to pounce. Amelia watched them for a moment. She felt a surprising lack of emotion. There was no jealousy, no anger. It was just clarity. It was like looking at 2 strangers who had just confirmed everything she already knew. "Ms. Westwood?" Mr. Clark asked, concerned by her silence. "It's just Amelia, please, David, and I'm ready." "Excellent. Ms. Davies, our CEO, will be making her opening remarks in 5 minutes. She'll introduce you then. We have your seat reserved at the main table, with Mr. Harrison." "Actually," Amelia said, her eyes still on her husband below, "I think I'd rather stand at the back for the speech. I'm not fond of grand entrances." Mr. Clark looked confused. This was the opposite of every donor he'd ever met. But he nodded. "As you wish. This way." Down in the great hall, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The rumor that had been circulating for weeks was now confirmed. The Westwood benefactor was in the building. This anonymous entity had, in 36 months, become a legend in New York philanthropy. They had not just donated, they had surgically repaired the hospital's failing infrastructure, all culminating in the new pediatric wing. Richard, meanwhile, had finally managed to corner Charles Harrison. "Charles, a triumph. The event is a triumph," Richard said, clapping the older man on the shoulder. "Richard, good to see you," Harrison replied, his smile polite but strained. He was clearly distracted, his eyes darting toward the main stage. "Glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it. Our firm, Morgan Stanley, is deeply committed to pediatric health. Deeply." This was a lie. Richard had blocked the firm's last 2 charitable donations to this very hospital, redirecting the funds to a golf tournament he favored. "That's good to hear," Harrison said, his attention elsewhere. Sophia, seeing the conversation stall, jumped in. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Sophia Knight, also with Mr. Vaughan. We were just saying how thrilled we are that the Westwood donor is finally being revealed. The buzz is incredible." This caught Harrison's attention. "Oh, it is. It truly is. We've been waiting for this moment for years. An incredible individual, incredibly humble." "Any hints on who it is?" Richard asked, trying to sound casual. "Is it one of the Silicon Valley boys, a new tech IPO?" Harrison chuckled. "You'll be surprised, Richard. We all were. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must get to the stage. It's almost time." As Harrison walked away, Richard scoffed. "Probably some 90-year-old dowager. Still, I need to get to him after the reveal. He'll be in a good mood." Sophia nodded, but she was scanning the crowd. "Where do you think your wife ran off to, anyway? Did she really go home?" "Probably," Richard said, taking another sip of champagne. "She can't handle rooms like this. She gets overwhelmed. It's pathetic, really. She has no stomach for this world." He looked around at the glittering crowd. Imagine being married to the plainest woman in the room. God, it's humiliating. He turned to Sophia, his expression softening. "After tonight, when I lock down Harrison, things are going to change. I promise." Sophia's smile was predatory. "I'll hold you to that, Richard." From the back of the hall, near a marble column, Amelia watched. She saw her husband, the man who had shared her bed for 5 years, laughing with his mistress. She saw him mock her to this other woman, and she felt the last thin thread of their marriage snap. The lights began to dim. A hush fell over the crowd. A woman in an elegant silver gown walked to the podium on the grand staircase. "Good evening, everyone," her voice boomed, clear and strong. "I am Dr. Alana Davies, the CEO of Metropolitan Children's Hospital. Welcome. Tonight, we are not just here to celebrate. We are here to give thanks." Richard and Sophia shuffled closer to the stage, wanting to be in the sight line of the main table. "For 5 years," Dr. Davies continued, "our hospital has dreamed of a new pediatric wing. We dreamed of a place where we could offer world-class oncology treatment to every child, regardless of their family's ability to pay. 2 years ago, that dream became a reality. It became a reality because of one anonymous, unbelievably generous source, the Westwood Foundation." A polite, intrigued applause rippled through the room. "This foundation," Dr. Davies said, her voice thick with emotion, "funded the entire project, from the blueprints to the final coat of paint. They did so without fanfare, without a single request for a plaque or a named building. They asked only that we do the work." The crowd was captivated. This was unprecedented. Tonight, after much persuasion, the founder of the Westwood Foundation has agreed to step out of the shadows and allow us to thank them publicly. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the greatest honor of my life to introduce to you the heart and soul of our new hospital, Ms. Amelia Westwood. The name hit the room like a shockwave. Amelia Westwood. For a fraction of a second, there was total, deafening silence. The name meant nothing to 99% of the room. It was not a tech billionaire. It was not a 90-year-old dowager. A single, powerful spotlight flared to life, illuminating the center of the grand staircase where a space had been left. But it was empty. Dr. Davies, looking slightly confused, leaned into the mic. "Ms. Westwood?" From the back of the room, a voice, calm and clear, replied, "I'm here, Alana." The spotlight operator, panicked, swung the beam across the crowd, searching. It swept over Richard and Sophia, who were staring, bewildered. And then it found her. Amelia was standing by the pillar, her simple navy dress seeming to glow under the intense light. She looked serene, unbothered by the 800 pairs of eyes that had suddenly fixed on her. In the front row, Charles Harrison beamed and began to applaud. "There she is!" The applause started, hesitant at first, then thundering as Dr. Davies and Mr. Harrison rushed from the stage to greet her. "Amelia, you preferred the back, indeed," Harrison boomed, taking her hand and kissing it. "You're a rogue." "I didn't want to trip," Amelia said with a smile. They began to escort her, this insignificant woman, through the sea of stunned socialites. The path parted for her. Everyone was staring. The simple dress no longer looked plain. It looked like a statement. It was the uniform of someone who had nothing to prove. But no one was more stunned than Richard. He was frozen. His champagne glass, forgotten, slipped from his numb fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The sound was obscenely loud in the brief lull in applause. "Richard," Sophia whispered, her face pale. "Richard, who is that? They said Amelia Westwood." Richard couldn't speak. His mouth was dry. His heart was hammering against his ribs. He was looking at his wife, the woman he had called a liability not an hour ago, being escorted to the stage by the very man he was desperate to impress. He watched as Charles Harrison himself held the microphone for her. That's my wife," he choked out. Sophia's head snapped toward him. Her eyes, moments ago so full of adoration, were now wide with a horrified, dawning comprehension. Your wife? That's Amelia." Amelia reached the podium. She looked out over the crowd, her gaze calm, her poise absolute. She was not the meek, quiet woman who decorated his penthouse. This was a commander. Her eyes swept the room, and for one brief, devastating moment, they met Richard's. She held his gaze. There was no anger, no triumph. There was just dismissal. She saw him, and she looked away, as if he were just another face in the crowd. That, more than anything, broke him. "Thank you, Alana. Thank you, Charles," Amelia began, her voice resonating with a warmth and authority that Richard had never heard. "My father, Marcus Westwood, was a brilliant man, but he was also a private one. He believed that great wealth was not a reward, but a responsibility. When he passed, he left me with that responsibility, and with one instruction: do good, but do it quietly." Richard's blood ran cold. Marcus Westwood, the industrialist, the reclusive, mythical titan of industry who had died years ago. The Forbes articles had estimated his worth in the billions. He had always assumed his wife's family was some distant, poor relation. "For years I honored that," Amelia continued. "The Westwood Foundation has operated anonymously, believing the work was more important than the name behind it. But Dr. Davies convinced me that stepping forward, just this once, might inspire others to do the same. This wing isn't from me. It's from every nurse who stays late, every doctor who refuses to give up, and every child who fights a battle no one should have to. I am merely a steward of a resource. They are the heroes. Thank you," she finished. The room was silent for a beat, then erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roaring, thundering, standing ovation. People were on their feet, tears in their eyes. Richard remained seated, his legs unable to move. He was a ghost at his own funeral. Sophia was gone. He didn't even see her leave. She had seen the new landscape, recognized her own irrelevance in it, and vanished into the crowd. Amelia, Ms. Westwood, was swarmed. Mayors, senators, tech moguls, everyone was pushing to get to her, to shake her hand. Richard just sat there, amidst the shattered glass of his champagne flute. The rest of the gala was a blur for Richard. He was suddenly the most visible and, simultaneously, the most invisible man in the room. He could feel the stares, the whispers. That's her husband. Vaughan, from Morgan Stanley. How did he land her? I saw him with Sophia Knight all night. The idiot. His colleagues from the bank, who had been avoiding him earlier, now approached with a sickening, false enthusiasm. Richard, my man, you've been holding out on us. Your wife. My goodness. Richard just nodded, his face a mask of sweat. He watched Amelia. She was holding court, not like a socialite, but like a queen. She moved through the room with grace, shaking hands, listening intently. She was discussing logistics with a senator, then laughing with Dr. Davies. She was radiant. The simple navy dress, which he had mocked, was now the talk of the room. Vogue's editor was overhead, asking who the designer was, calling it the definition of modern power. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he saw a break in the crowd and stumbled toward her. He had to fix this. He had to spin this. Amelia, he said, his voice hoarse. He tried to put his hand on her arm. She moved away from his touch, her movement so subtle it was almost imperceptible. But to him, it was a slap. She turned to him, her expression polite, as if addressing a stranger who had asked for directions. Richard, are you enjoying the evening? Amelia, my God, you were magnificent. He was desperate, fawning. Why didn't you tell me? Westwood, all this time? You never asked, Richard, she said simply, her voice void of accusation. It was just a statement of fact. I don't understand. The small trust fund. You assumed, she said. You saw my simple clothes and my quiet life, and you assumed I was insignificant. I believe that was your word. Richard flinched as if struck. No, Amelia, I was stressed. I was testing you. It was a joke. You know I didn't mean it. Amelia's polite mask didn't waver. The joke, as you call it, was very illuminating. Please, he begged, his voice dropping to a whisper. My God, Amelia, we can be the biggest couple in New York. The power we'll have. The Harrison account. Before she could reply, Charles Harrison himself walked up, his arm extended not to Richard, but to Amelia. Amelia, my dear, the board is having a private toast. We need you. He then looked at Richard, as if noticing him for the first time. His eyes were arctic. Ah, Richard, Harrison said, his tone dripping with newfound condescension. I was surprised to learn you were Amelia's husband. You are, without a doubt, the luckiest man I have ever met. He leaned in, his voice dropping. And I must say, perhaps the most foolish. I was standing not 10 feet away when you arrived. I heard you tell that reporter your wife was not feeling her best. Then I saw you all night with that garish young woman from your office. You, sir, have a talent for backing the wrong horse. Richard's face drained of all color. Harrison smiled, a cold, sharp expression. As for the Harrison account you've been chasing, don't bother. The Westwood Foundation, as it happens, holds a significant position on my board. Amelia and I have been working together for years. I'll be moving my portfolio. I prefer to do business with people I trust, and I certainly don't trust a man who doesn't even know his own wife." Harrison turned his back on the stunned banker. "Come, Amelia. Let's leave Mr. Vaughan to his networking." Amelia gave Richard one last, fleeting look. It was a look of pity. Then she turned, took Charles Harrison's arm, and walked away, leaving Richard standing alone in the center of the room, a pariah in his own tuxedo. The ride home was a symphony of silence, punctuated only by the purr of the Bentley's engine and the quiet, measured tones of Amelia's voice. Richard sat pressed against the passenger door, the plush leather feeling like a cold, slick wall. He was a prisoner in a car he now realized was never his. Amelia, this stranger who was his wife, was on the phone. "Yes, Robert, Forbes has the exclusive for the morning," she said, her voice calm, as if she were discussing brunch plans. "I want the narrative focused on the hospital's new treatment protocols, not on me." "Yes, but the Wall Street Journal can have the financial follow-up. They'll be interested in the Foundation's new ethical investment criteria." "That's correct. We're divesting from any funds that don't meet a AAA ESG rating. Yes, that includes Morgan Stanley's primary energy fund. They've been warned for 2 quarters. This is just the execution." Richard's blood turned to ice. His fund, the one he'd built his reputation on. She wasn't just a donor. She was a market-moving whale, and she was about to beach him. He tried to speak. "Amelia," he croaked, reaching a trembling hand across the console. She didn't look at him. She simply held up a single, elegant finger, a universal sign for wait, and he felt his entire body recoil as if she had slapped him. The gesture was so casual, so dismissive, it was more profound than any shout. She continued, "Thank you, Robert. I'll expect the drafts by 7. She hung up and immediately dialed another number. Richard watched, his mind a frantic, screaming void. He was trying to calculate. Billions. Marcus Westwood, the reclusive titan? The man was a myth, a Forbes cover story from a decade ago. He had married that? He had mocked. He had told Amelia Westwood that her dress was insignificant. He felt a bubble of hysterical laughter rise in his chest, so sharp and painful he almost choked on it. "David," she said, her voice warming instantly. "Yes, I'm just on my way home. It was a wonderful night. You did the real work. Oh, Charles is a dare. Yes, he mentioned his portfolio. It's his personal decision, of course, but I appreciate his solidarity. Please send my best to the board. We'll speak on Monday." She hung up again. The silence that fell in the car was heavier than a vault door. "Amelia," Richard tried again, his voice pathetic, a stranger's voice. "Amelia, my God, I don't—" "Be quiet, Richard," she said, not unkindly, but with the flat finality of a doctor delivering a diagnosis. "We're almost home." She made one final call. "Mark, I'm 5 minutes out." "Yes, he is with me. Please be discreet. I want him escorted from the premises." "No, he won't be violent. Just lost. Have his personal effects from the front closet ready to go with him. The rest will be boxed." Escorted from the premises, his home, his penthouse. The Bentley glided into the private subterranean garage. The attendant, a young man named Ben, who always jogged over to take Richard's keys and compliment the Mercedes, now simply stood by the elevator. He opened the Bentley's back door for Amelia, his head bowed. "Good evening, Miss Westwood. A pleasure to see you, ma'am." He didn't even look at Richard. The elevator ride to the penthouse was the longest 60 seconds of Richard's life. He stared at their reflection in the polished bronze doors. He looked haggard, his Tom Ford tux suddenly looking like a cheap costume. His face was slick with a cold sweat. She just looked poised, composed, like she was returning from a board meeting, not from the public detonation of her marriage. "Amelia, we can talk about this," he whispered as the numbers climbed. This is just a misunderstanding. A colossal mistake." The elevator chimed, and the doors opened directly into the vast, white marble foyer. The apartment was silent, the skyline glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. "There is no misunderstanding, Richard," Amelia said, stepping out onto the marble. Richard stumbled in after her, his feet heavy, his bravado, his entire identity bleeding out onto the priceless rugs. "Amelia, please, talk to me." She didn't turn. She walked to the enormous minimalist bar, the one he always used to impress clients. She opened a bottle of Voss water and poured it into a crystal glass. She didn't offer him one. The exclusion was a deliberate, calculated cut. "What is there to say?" she asked, finally turning to face him. "Why?" he burst out, the word tearing from his throat. "Why would you do this? Hide this from me? Your husband? Westwood? Marcus Westwood's daughter?" He let out that high-pitched, hysterical laugh. You let me go on about my bonus?" "My God, my bonus! It's probably what you find in your couch cushions, isn't it? It's pocket change." He was pacing now, gesturing wildly. You let me mock you. Tonight! That dress!" His voice cracked. I'm an idiot. I know. I get it. You proved your point. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You won, okay? You won. Is that what you wanted? To make me look like the world's biggest fool?" He grabbed his hair. "But it was a test, right? This whole marriage, it was some sick, twisted test of my character. And I failed. I failed, okay? I admit it. I was stressed. The Harrison deal. Sophia. She's nobody. She's an ambitious kid. She means nothing. I was playing the game. You know the game." "A test?" Amelia's voice cut through his hysterics, and he stopped, frozen. She hadn't raised her voice. She didn't need to. It was lethal. "Do you think I have time for that? Do you think my life is some high school play, Richard? This wasn't a test. This was just a Tuesday, the day it all finally came due." She set her glass down with a precise, quiet click. "You ask why I hid it. I didn't hide it. I just was. I was Amelia. I came to New York to escape the name, to find one person, one who would see me, who would love me for my quiet life and my simple clothes. For a little while, I thought that was you. I thought you loved me." "I did. I do," he pleaded, taking a step toward her. "No," she said, and the word was a physical barrier. "You loved a concept. You loved a beautiful, blank, well-bred wife who came from good stock. A wife who would ask no questions, have no opinions, and provide a placid backdrop for your important life. You didn't marry me, Richard. You acquired me. I was your highest status acquisition. A wife who was pretty, but not too pretty. Smart, but not too smart. And most importantly, not ambitious enough to overshadow you." He flinched. "That's not true, isn't it?" she challenged. "You've been ashamed of me for at least a year. Ashamed I didn't network. Ashamed I didn't schmooze. Ashamed I didn't dress like Sophia in Balenciaga and Versace. Ashamed I preferred to volunteer at the kitchen rather than chair a meaningless luncheon. You were ashamed of me. Tonight, you just finally said the quiet part out loud. You will embarrass me. A liability. Insignificant. You said I looked cheap." She scoffed, a dry, bitter sound. "You're worried about your bonus. Let's talk about your finances, shall we? This penthouse. You told your colleagues you bought it after a killer year in futures. I signed the deed. It's owned by a Delaware-based holding company that my father set up in 1992. My holding company. Richard's mouth went dry. That Mercedes S-Class you're so proud of, the one you used to arrive in style tonight, without me? It's leased by my family office, as is the Porsche 911 you keep at the Hamptons house. Oh, and the Hamptons house, the one you tell everyone you inherited from a distant uncle? My father bought it in 1998. It was my mother's favorite place. You just moved in. She was closer now, her eyes sweeping over him, inventorying every lie he was wearing. And this, her gaze dropped to his wrist. That Patek Philippe, the one you tell people was a gift from the Morgan Stanley board for outstanding performance. It was a 5th anniversary gift, Richard, from me. Paid for with a dividend check from the Westwood Foundation, the same foundation you just watched me represent, the same foundation you've been, for 5 years, unknowingly, living off of. She paused, letting the weight of it all crush him. You are not a partner in this marriage. You have been a dependent. He couldn't breathe. He sank onto one of the sterile white sofas he had always pretended to like. Amelia, my God, I'll change. I swear, I can change. I see it all now. I see you. It's you I love. It's you. The power. It's you. Stop, she commanded. Just stop. You don't love me. You love this. She swept her hand around the glittering, empty room. You love the idea of being married to Amelia Westwood. You're just rebranding. You're making a new sales pitch, and frankly, it's pathetic. It's over. A last, desperate spark of his old self ignited. The fighter. The banker. The prenup! He scrambled, his voice hoarse. I'll contest it. I'm entitled. Spousal support. Amelia's laugh was the coldest sound he had ever heard. It was the sound of a safe clicking shut. The prenup, the 80-page document your top-tier lawyers at Sullivan and Cromwell drafted, the one they billed you for, and that you then expensed to your corporate account? Richard's face went white. Richard, my lawyers. The Westwood lawyers. They're the ones who wrote it. They just let your team review it. They let them change a few clauses about household pets and summer holiday schedules. It made you feel powerful, I suppose. You signed it without even reading Appendix B, didn't you? The miscellaneous assets addendum. The one listing the foundation's premarital holdings. You just saw Amelia's small personal trust fund on page 1 and assumed you were the breadwinner. You assumed you were the big dog. It's ironclad. It stipulates that in the event of a dissolution, especially one based on, and I quote, public marital misconduct or gross personal humiliation, you get nothing. You keep your personal effects, the contents of your personal bank account, and that is all. You have 24 hours to vacate all properties. Public misconduct? Infidelity? Sophia and I, we never, he stammered, the lie weak and thin. Don't lie! Her voice finally, cracked like a whip, and he physically recoiled. I don't care if you slept with her. You humiliated me. You arrived with her on your arm. You stood with her, your mistress, and you mocked me. You did it in front of Charles Harrison, in front of my entire board, in front of the press. That is public, and it is gross. And it is, thank God, grounds for immediate termination. The penthouse doorbell chimed, a soft, polite, 3-note sound. And that, Amelia said, her composure snapping back into place, would be my security team. Richard's head snapped up. His heart was a trapped bird against his ribs. Security? You called security. On me? In my own. In our home. It's my home, Richard. And you are trespassing. The doors to the private elevator opened, and two large men in dark, impeccably tailored suits stepped into the foyer. They were not bouncers. They were ex-Secret Service, with earpieces and the quiet, immovable presence of men who handled problems far larger than Richard. They nodded once at Amelia. Miss Westwood. Then they turned to him. Mr. Vaughan, the lead one said, his voice polite but unyielding. We're here to escort you to your vehicle. A flicker of desperate hope. My Mercedes? Richard asked, his voice a pathetic squeak. No, sir. The Mercedes is a leased asset of the Westwood Corporation. It stays here, the man, Mark, replied, as if reading from a script. We're escorting you to a car service that will take you to a hotel of your choosing. Ms. Westwood has prepaid for one night at the Pierre, the final, perfect insult. A 5-star hotel, but as a one-night charitable dismissal. This is... Richard was hyperventilating. He looked at Amelia, his eyes wide with a terror so profound it was almost primal. This was real. My things, he stammered. Your personal effects from the front closet are in a garment bag downstairs, Mark said. The rest, your clothes, your golf clubs, your Peloton, will be boxed by a white glove service and delivered to your office at Morgan Stanley tomorrow morning. My office, my job. The final straw. Richard shrieked, lurching to his feet, the last of his composure shattering. Amelia, you can't! That call! Divesting! Harrison, you'll ruin me! You'll destroy me! I'll be nothing! This was the moment, the apex of his panic. Amelia walked right up to him, stopping so close he could see the sapphire fire in her eyes, the ones he'd always thought were just a dull, placid blue. You were already nothing, Richard, she said, her voice a quiet, devastating whisper. You were just well-dressed. You built your entire life on a foundation of appearances. You sneered at me for my simple life. But my life is real. My work is real. The dress I wore tonight, it was made by a woman in London whose family business I saved from bankruptcy. The hospital wing, it will save the lives of children. Your life, your entire life, was a collection of expensive trinkets and cheap relationships, a house of cards. You worried about being embarrassed? You are the embarrassment. You're a man who had everything, a home, a partner who loved him, a future you couldn't even conceive of. And you traded it all. For what? For a chance to impress a man at a party? For a cheap thrill with a woman who will be gone by morning? She shook her head, a small, sad gesture. The problem, Richard, wasn't the foundation. It was that you never bothered to check what was underneath. Not with me, and not with yourself. She turned to her security team. Mark, please, show Mr. Vaughan out. Richard was sobbing now. Not loud, but a hitched, broken, pathetic sound. Amelia, please, just one more chance. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He reached for her, his hand outstretched. Don't touch me, she said, without raising her voice. Mark gently, but with immovable firmness, placed a hand on Richard's chest. Sir, let's go. Richard looked around the vast, marble room. The cold, sterile penthouse he had always secretly hated, had always felt was too much. He now realized it was the only thing that had been holding him up. He was led out. He didn't resist. He was a puppet with his strings cut. He looked back one last time at the woman in the simple navy dress. She was just watching. The elevator doors chimed. They closed. He was gone. Amelia stood in the foyer for a full minute. The silence of the penthouse was absolute. It was no longer cold. It was just quiet. She walked to the great glass window, the one Richard had always used as his backdrop, and looked out over Central Park. The city lights glittered like a carpet of fallen stars. Her city. She wasn't crying. She wasn't triumphant. She was just breathing. She picked up her phone. She made one more call. Robert, hi. Yes, one more thing. I'll need a statement prepared for Morgan Stanley's board in the morning. No, not about the divestment. About my husband. It seems Mr. Vaughan will be taking an immediate and indefinite leave of absence from the bank. Yes, for personal reasons. I'm sure they'll understand. Thank you. Good night. She hung up. She walked to the bar and took off the sapphire earrings that had belonged to her mother, placing them gently on the marble. She looked at her reflection in the dark, floor-to-ceiling glass. For the first time in 5 years, the woman looking back at her wasn't Richard's quiet, simple, insignificant wife. It was Amelia Westwood, and she was finally home. That night, Richard Vaughan lost everything. He lost his home, his wife, and by the time the markets opened on Monday, his job. Charles Harrison's public move, combined with the quiet divestment of the Westwood Foundation, made him toxic. Sophia, a true survivor, landed on her feet, quietly transferring to the London office. But this story isn't about Richard. It's about Amelia. It's about the quiet strength that is so often mistaken for weakness. It's a reminder that a person's value is never, ever measured by the label on their dress, but by the content of their character and the quiet integrity of their actions. Amelia Westwood went on to become one of the most powerful and respected voices in global philanthropy, no longer in the shadows. She learned that you cannot build a real life on a false foundation, and that the only person you ever need to prove your worth to is yourself. What did you think of Amelia's story? Does it remind you of anyone you know? We all have moments where we feel underestimated. Share your own story in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this, please don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more true life stories every week. Thank you for listening.